Welcome everybody. Today's is a parent special. So I thought 1 week of the class has been done and I would love to talk with the parents, answer any questions that there are, but also tell you guys a little bit about what I've been doing over the past week and a little bit of motivation for this class. So I'll start right in. So the motivation of my class was I came home for during my last quarter. I'm finishing up my MBA at Stanford. And so my quarter is finishing in actually 3 weeks. And so I was at home and I saw that many other kids in high school had their exams canceled. And they were spending the time mostly watching TV or not knowing what to do. So I thought back to when I was in that age and I thought this would be a perfect time to get ahead of your SATs and just get those done so you don't have to worry about it during school. And so I just threw together a website and asked my parents to send it out. And they sent it out to people. And I was a little overwhelmed by the initial response. There were about 100 people signed up within 1 day. But so I decided to then give this the due respect and do the work. So it's been very exciting. I've actually really enjoyed doing the work and doing the studying with everybody over the past week. So it's been a lot of fun. And it seems like other people are also benefiting. So I'm happy that we can do this. So I also want to address a very big news that came out in the past couple of days, which is that the University of California system in California has canceled SAT requirements and they will be phasing it out within the next 5 years. So that's actually really big. And I hope the SATs get canceled just in general. The less tests people have to do in high school, the better it is. So at the moment, though, only University of California has canceled it. The big Ivies and the big schools have not yet canceled it. So the SAT still goes on. And on the call yesterday, I did a poll with all the students asking them if they want this class to keep on going. And it was an overwhelming yes. 98% of them said yes. And so I decided, well, let's keep this class going. So I'll start with a couple quick polls. I would love to get your perspective. So a screen's going to pop up and then you can just select the answer to the question that I'll give. So the first question I'd like to ask all of you is your child enjoying these classes? Okay, awesome. That makes me really happy. This is what we have. So it makes me extremely happy that they're actually enjoying it. I would never have thought that SATs can be enjoyed. I did not enjoy doing my SATs. So this is great. Okay, let me ask one more question. This question is that is your child doing IB right now? Or if it's not IB in your school, basically the last 2 years of high school, or is your child maybe outside? So if they're doing IB, then put yes. If they're either graduated or before, put no. Okay, perfect. So this is what we have. So this makes me very happy also because we'll touch on this today, which is that one of my driving motivators for doing this class was that I think SATs can be done much earlier on in high school. We don't have to wait till the last year of high school or the last summer, because the SATs actually, in essence, it's actually quite easy, and I'll show you a couple questions. But it's quite easy. The context and the content you need to know for it is done in high school. So if you can take it earlier on, it's much more beneficial. And then one more question, which is your child, were your child's final exams canceled? So right now, during this period, was your child's final exams canceled? Okay. This is what we have. So that seems right. For most of you, you're here because your child's final exams were canceled. So I hope this is a good way that they can spend their time if they're on holiday. For those of you whose exams are not canceled, it's interesting that there's a lot of you joining as well. That makes me happy. the more people that can benefit from this, honestly, the better it is. But I think it will be easiest for those people who are either on summer holidays or for those people whose exams are canceled right now. Okay, so let me now share my screen. Okay, so what we'll do is in the beginning, I'll just share some of the things we've done in the class. And then the last 30 minutes, we'll leave it for Q&A. And you all can ask your questions. So here is, and then let me do this. Okay, so you should be able to see the screen. If you're on Zoom, at the top you'll notice, it says View Options over here. If you click View Options in the dropdown, it will show side by side. This will help you see me and the screen. So click side by side under View Options. Then once you click side by side, what you will get is something like this. So if you hover over the difference between the screen and the cameras over here, there will be a small line, and then you pick that line and you drag it to the center. If you drag it to the center, then you will see me and the screen. And if you see two different screens, then you can click speaker view at the top, and then you should only be seeing me and you should only be seeing the screen. So hopefully that helps. All right, so this is what you should be seeing, the shared screen and me. Awesome. So I'll go over my study style. So what this class is actually is not, you'll notice it's not a math class. I'm not teaching any math. There's a lot of study methods I've used in my life. And I thought maybe I'll share those with other people and see what happens. So this class is more teaching of learning to learn, like how to approach a question or how to approach a test so that you can maximize your learning in that test. So there's numerous methods that I go over and I'll show more later. The biggest one is learning from mistakes. And so we spent a lot of time in the first week of the class just going over the kinds of mistake you can make in the SAT, and then doing a root cause analysis of what's the root cause of that mistake, and then how can we fix that root cause, and not just doing practice problems. So you'll notice, there we go. So in class, I asked all the students to type in what was the root cause of the mistakes they were making. This was after we did a bunch of exercises, and these were the responses on the right. So you'll see most of the mistakes are misunderstood question, misread the question, misread question, misunderstood question. If you read through these, it's either about misunderstanding question or misreading question or going too quickly. So the SAT is really not about difficult math or difficult English. It's just about attention and concentration. And so over the course of the 30 days, one thing I'm going to push more with everyone is how to increase concentration and attention. We haven't touched on it yet, but I'll slowly introduce this as the week goes by. The other thing I've always done is collective learning is more fun. I've always studied with friends. And not only is it more fun, it's actually more, you learn more from it as well. Because I'm learning not only from my mistakes, but I'm learning from my friends' mistakes as well. And on the flip side is also true. I'm learning from what I know, and I'm also learning from what my friends know. So I really tried to build a cohesive class where 100 people can work with each other and help each other grow. And it's been tremendously helpful already, just having so many different people share their mistakes and learn from them. I also like to focus on practicing smart, which is that we've only done about, I think, 30 SAT questions in the 1 week. But I feel like we've taken away a lot of learning from these 30 questions because we're practicing smart. We're not just doing practice questions, we're doing a practice question 4 or 5 times and learning 4 or 5 different things from that one question. So I hope that this can also be a strategy that's taken over to different subjects. And one thing I like to stress is getting into the mindset of the test maker. If the child can learn how to create an SAT, then they'll know how to answer the SAT very easily. Creating the test is actually much more difficult than solving the test. And then I'm hoping that throughout I can sprinkle in some life lessons to take away from this class, such as I really enjoyed in the first session, I shared with all the kids to write thank you and write thank you with a reason, like why they're saying thank you. And it always brings a smile to my face when at the end of class, they write thank you and they say thank you for this awesome class or thank you for what I learned. So I like to just sprinkle some of these things, and especially Stanford focuses a lot of this on this, like building good human beings for the world. And so I'm just bringing the lessons I've learned during my MBA and sprinkling those into my SAT. And the most important thing I think I do with them is I'm building pure notes. And what I call pure notes is notes that if you come back to a year later, they still make sense and you can still learn everything you learned before. And it's different from rough work. Rough work is when you get a question, you're practicing the question, then the rough work that you're doing, that's not helpful for if you revisit it a year later. Nor is it helpful if you're before the test, you need to read something and learn something right before the test. Rough work is not important. Pure notes is where it's at. So I'm guiding them through the step-by-step process of how I've made pure notes for all my subjects up till now. And I actually keep those in a cupboard. All my pure notes are there. So I'm guiding them through that process, and hopefully they can learn that too. So like I said, the SAT is quite simple. These are the kinds of question you get. Like in this question, you just substitute A over B as 1 over 2 and get the answer. Here you're subtracting this from this. There's no multiplication, it's just subtraction. Here it's a very simple converting a word problem into equations. And the answer is this. I mean, it's really simple converting. The most difficult SAT you can get is if you have something like this. And in here, you need to know that 8x over 2y can be written as 2 to the power of 3x minus y. And if you don't know that, then you won't get this answer. But these type of questions, maybe 1 or 2 per SAT. And what ends up happening is people make mistakes here because they read the question too fast or they're not focusing enough. Like for example, instead of A over B equals 2, they'll put B over A equals 2 and get 4 times 2. Things like that. So the SAT is quite simple, which is why I'm very glad there's people from IGCSE also joining these classes, because I really think it can be done by anybody. So this is what we have done over the past week. These are the pure notes so far. So I asked them to keep a list of to-dos, which is as they're going through the class, if they see something they don't know. For example, if we go back, if they don't know how to do this question, I asked them to write this down and learn it later. There's so many good resources online and there's so much math being taught in Asia. I don't need to repeat that math, so they can just go up and look at it later. Postulates is a section that these are the lessons that I want them to take away from the classes. Notice the applying for colleges one. I did this at the first session because I think convincing someone to do the SAT is easier if you tell them what are the things required for university applications. So in university applications, it's not just SAT scores and IB scores. You also have essays, recommendations, and interviews. And so it's important that the child is aware so that when they're spending their time, they can allocate their time into different buckets. So that for essays, for example, one essay for UCLA was, how have you helped your school become a better place? So if you know that essay in advance, and if you're in IGCSE, you can know to get involved in activities that will help your school become a better place. So that's why I shared this in the beginning. And we've already gone over root cause of your mistakes. Then in math, we went over types of errors, and on the right, you'll see all the types of errors we've collected. And just notice these types of errors. They're actually really simple. Most of them are misunderstood question, sometimes converting word problems incorrectly, copying too quickly, guessing the complex option because we think it's correct, guessing an option that's close even though it's not exactly what we got. Simple algebra errors like working with negatives, fractions, decimals, powers, working with zeros like 1000 divided by 10, making errors like that, and even handwriting errors. So these are the kinds of errors that SAT is actually trying to trick you into doing. So this is the kinds of error everybody across the world is making. And so I'm surprised as to why no other SAT tutor really focuses on this, because this is what they're testing basically. So I thought I'd go over these. And then on the left, we also went over math approach, which is we went over an approach on how to read the question. We focused an entire class on how to read the question so that they don't make these errors that they made, they don't make the question misreading errors. And we'll keep going into things like this. All right, I think this is it. Yeah. All right, I'm back. So I have some overall tips, and then we'll open it up to questions from everybody. So some overall tips for you to ensure that your child can get the most out of this is I would highly recommend discussing, and many of you said you're doing this, but discussing what we do in this class with your child. It makes for great dinner conversation. And what that helps doing is it helps reinforce some of the things learned in class into their head. And so there's a higher likelihood they'll remember it even after these classes are over. I would also ask that you guide them to come up with their own action plan. For example, we went over the university applications. So then if you can guide the child into asking, okay, now you know what's required in your university application, what are you going to do now? And help the child come up with their own plan, like, okay, now I will focus on helping my school. I will do my SAT before my IB. I will get this much IB grades, et cetera, et cetera. And if they come up with it themselves, then they can be more dedicated towards their scores. And I would hope that you can help them help the child use these lessons in different classes also. So you can ask them questions like, how do you think doing mistakes-based learning can help you in IB math or IGCSE math? And then I have two small asks from you, which is that if you can ask the kids to participate in class and to keep their videos on, it also helps me not feel alone. And it also helps them be more involved in the class. So these are just some of my tips. I don't have any kids of my own, so I am not one to give you any tips, but this is some of the things that's worked well for me, and I'm just passing it on. You can take it for if you like it or not. Great. So we have about almost 50 of you. So what we'll do in the Q&A session is I have Lavanya and Naman who are going to help me with the questions. For the first half of the questions, since there's so many of you, if you can just type in your questions in the chat, but please type the questions to everybody. You will notice in the options, please send it to everyone so that Naman and Lavanya can help me read the questions. And then I'll answer some of these questions initially. And then we'll leave the last entire 20 minutes for open. I'll let everybody, you can unmute yourselves and talk, and then we can have a quick discussion. But I want to make sure that the first 20 minutes I can answer as many questions as possible. So if you have any, please put them in chat. Yes, okay, so this is a big question regarding missed sessions. So for missed sessions, what we're doing right now is every day, the same class is replayed at 7 p.m. So the recording is replayed at 7 p.m. For people to see. But if you've missed a session beforehand, like if you joined today and you haven't seen the past week's session, then at the moment it's not possible because there's a lot of other people recorded in this as well, not just me. I'll try and find a way to see how to make this available in the future. But for now, what we're doing is just doing repetition. And even if you join today, trust me, it's perfectly fine. Everything I went over in the past week will be repeated. And so there's really nothing missed. Over the next 20, 25 days, everything will be repeated again. So I don't know what the UC system intends to replace SAT with. They said they'll build their own testing system, but there's really no way saying. It's very difficult to build another testing system. The reason they scrapped this one was they deemed it racist. And so it's really difficult to build a system that tests both people with wealth and without wealth equally. So some people say that it's probably just going to be canceled forever in the future. And I hope that happens. I mean, SAT is not fun, so I really hope that happens. But for now, I really don't know. For ACT versus SAT, so if you're trying to decide between ACT and SAT, I would recommend having them just take both tests. They're different for different people. And some people like ACT more, some people like SAT more, but the only real way to know which one works better for you is just take both tests. And in terms of these lessons that we apply here being applicable for ACT, absolutely. I think almost everything we'll do here will apply very directly to SAT. The way I'm trying to do this is very much being learning to learn. And so to keep this as general as possible so that these skills can really be used a lot outside of SAT. Like I really hope that students can take away what we're going through here and apply it in IGCSE and IB math. I mean, IGCSE and IB math is also mostly same kinds of error, like misreading question or working with negatives, etc. I'm not sure which other universities will scrap SAT. I really don't know. I'm continuing this since people seemed excited, and the class said for me to keep going. So that's why I'm keeping going. Thank you so much. Why am I doing this? Where do I get the motivation? I just wish that I had taken my SAT earlier. I wished my younger brother had taken his SAT earlier. And so I thought, I saw many of my friends, family friends, kids having nothing to do this summer. So I thought, why not help them out? And since I'm enjoying it so much, I was actually supposed to work in a data analysis company here in Singapore, but then the virus took that away. So now that I'm really enjoying this, I'm trying to think maybe I can do something in education. I don't know. We'll see. But right now, this is quite fun. Okay, there's a question about getting bogged down with the questions they struggle with. Could you elaborate? What do you mean by bogged down? I'm not too sure. So how to recommend increasing analytical reasoning and logic among students? So this is a very interesting one because my argument would almost be that SAT does not require more reasoning or more logic. It's really more about just concentration and focus. If you can focus and concentrate and do the test, there's really quite limited amount of reasoning or logic actually required for the SAT. In terms of, in general, I'm going to go over various techniques of approaching the question in different ways. And I'm hoping that approaching the question in different ways starts to build the repertoire of mathematical approaches or even just English approaches. And that can really broaden the way the mind works in terms of approaching questions. So for example, approaching question by just solving it in mathematics, which is the way entire Asia does it. But there's another way, which is solving it doing crossing out MCQ options, which is how the entire United States does it. And these two ways are very different. And just having both of these in your head increases reasoning as well. And I think this is similar, like for me especially, and for many of you, like your kids are bilingual, and I think that also increases the way the brain can function. So I'm hoping that this helps. I'm not too sure how to answer this question.
There have been 2 questions asking how many times they should take SAT.
Oh, okay, great question. Thank you for that. Okay, let me share my screen once more. I want to get on my soapbox for this one. I have a request from all parents, please, which is, this is my request. Please build a culture at home, which is the child should only take the SAT once. Please only once. And let me tell you why. Even when I told my parents this, my dad was like, wait a minute, but you should take it twice. But please hear me out on this one. Let me come back. Okay, I say please only once because here's why. If you put in 50 hours of studying for the first SAT, and you put in 50 hours of studying for the second SAT, you've put in 100 hours studying for the SAT, and maybe your score went up 30. I'm saying, why not take those 100, or even less, why not take those 80 hours and just study for it once, 80 hours once, and then take the SAT once. Similarly to how you study for the IGCSE and the IB, you can only take IGCSE once and the IB once. And you'll notice that the vigor with which people are studying for the IBs and IGCSEs is very different, because mentally you only have one chance to get it. And with SAT, there's so many practice questions online, you can know what your score is going to be before you walk into the room. So I would recommend to set a goal that my goal is to get 750. And please don't set 800. It's not realistic. Please set a goal that's realistic, because here's why. You only have a certain amount of hours in high school, and you have to bucket those in high school activities and going to classes, studying for IB, studying for IGCSE, eating food, being healthy, et cetera, et cetera. And so to trying to get 800 in SAT, but then risking the activities the child can participate in or the IB grades, that's not a holistic approach. So I hope that if I can bring about any change in Asia, is that all students only take the SATs only once, but they do it with such vigor that they know going to that SAT is their only chance. And so they put in that 80 hours up front instead of putting in 50 hours twice. Let me do a quick poll. Does that make sense? If not, we can revisit this in the last part of today. The question is, does it make sense for having the child only take the SAT once? Okay, this is what we have. Perfect. So again, like this is just my perspective. This is one person's perspective. You can take it or leave it, but I would only want the person to take SAT once. Thank you, Naman.
There were about 4 questions on SAT subjects test also. That will you be teaching it? Is it helpful?
Got it. SAT subject tests depend very much on universities. Some universities require them, some universities don't. And so, so at the moment, I don't have any plans of, I actually don't know what I will be doing after this month of SAT. So I don't know if I'll do subject test or whatever, or if I'll do this again. I really don't know. But in terms of subject test, it depends on the university. If the university requires it, then do it. You can also take the subject test later because the knowledge required for subject test is very similar to what's taught in IB. So that's more difficult to take earlier on. And sorry, one more thing for taking the SAT twice. If you really want to take the SAT twice, I would recommend take the SAT now or immediately as possible without any studying. So you know where you are, you get a feel for the room, the environment, the kind of pace and the stress that you'll have. And then once you get that feel, then you can study for the SAT. But if you really want to do an official practice one. Thank you, Naman.
Regarding the question about being bogged down, it has been clarified.
Oh yeah.
Means they spend too long on questions they struggle with instead of moving on and returning to those later.
That's awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. For this one, I think we'll touch on this over the course of the class, but the biggest one is to do questions that you can know. The only way people can make tests difficult is give more questions and less time. Basically, reducing time makes the test more difficult. That's the only thing. And so, I think that's a good thing to add. I'll actually write this down, and I'll touch on this in one of my classes. Thank you for sharing this. Okay, I'm now lost in the English section in the questions. Can you help me with the next one?
So one person wants to know what other way there is to study for SAT. Any books or any material?
Yeah, I think the best place to start studying for SATs is Khan Academy. And you go on Khan Academy, do a test, and identify the areas that needs more improvement. And then Khan Academy has a lot of videos to help you improve in subject matter. But I would recommend doing a root cause analysis, just seeing which area needs more improvement and then getting books or things for that area. Almost all offerings in SAT are very similar. So you really can't go wrong picking any of the offerings. I would just maybe spend a little bit of time thinking how that specific offering helps address the root cause of the errors of the person taking the SAT. Like maybe they don't need to go through math if math is good, or maybe they just need to sit at home and improve their handwriting, and that's what makes them better at SAT. Or they just need to sit at home and practice reading questions. So if you can get involved with them, identify what the root cause of their mistakes are, then the approach depends very much on where they're going wrong, basically. Yeah, I think you're very right in that SATs is about knowing the strategies, and I'm hoping that my sessions help with that. I'm surprised that other people don't teach math this way, and this is how I studied for the SATs and how I helped my younger brother study for it. So I'm glad that this is helping, and I'm glad that this is new, and I'm glad that you're all liking it. Okay, what is considered a good SAT score? This is a really good question. So online, I showed this in the first class actually. Let me pull that up. I want to show you this. Okay, so the data I'm showing you is very old. This is not current data. So so some schools in Singapore, I know UWC has this. This is the screenshots I got from my brother. They show you a grid of people that applied to, in this case, Northwestern over the past couple of years. And again, this is 2015 data. This is not accurate, so please don't go off this data. On this axis, they will show SAT score, and this axis will be IB score. And then they show which students get in and which students don't. So depending on the university you are targeting, you can know what SAT score is good. But I would flip that almost the other way, which is depending on the SAT score your child is getting, you can know which universities to apply to using the system. And so this at UWC, this was called Family Naviance Family Connection. Naman, can you write this down in chat, please? Naviance Family Connection. And some other schools in the, I think SAS, Singapore American School also has it. If your school does not, you can I hope you can reach out to your friends in other schools or just ask the school to purchase this. Another company is C Alpha. Naman, can you write C Alpha, CIALFO, which offers this. So you can ask your school to purchase subscription from C Alpha. Here's another screenshot from Purdue. So you can see that, if you get somewhere above here. But notice how, actually this is a better example is here. In NYU, notice how there's X's all across. And this is again to drive home the fact that SAT and IB scores is not the only thing in the application. There's also your essays, your activities, and your recommendations and your interviews. Those play a very important role. And you'll notice in the previous ones as well, there are people that were really good. I mean, this person got a perfect SAT and almost perfect IB, and they still got rejected from Purdue. And so this again takes me back to, this is a holistic process. And so you can help your child determine where to spend those hours. Where does it make sense? You don't want to spend 50 hours trying to increase SAT by 10 points when you can spend that time, when they can spend that time working in activities or in resumes. Oh, now it's CIALFO. Okay, thank you. I'm glad your son thinks that I'm a better teacher than some of his teachers. I think it's just a benefit of being on Zoom, and I think being close with their age. So I'm glad that helps. Okay, SAT, how beneficial SAT prep course is? I think that depends tremendously on the prep course. I haven't done these prep courses here, so I'm not sure. But what I've noticed is group classes in the way they're taught here don't help, because they teach math, but your child already knows math. Like we went over the questions, the math is not difficult. So that doesn't. So prep courses, honestly, if you ask me, I think prep courses are not very helpful. Not the ones that are offered right now. I hope something like this, where it's more geared towards learning how to learn, is more helpful. But from what I've seen, but again, I would ask other parents, like other parents that actually have experience. Don't go off what I said. Like someone said that you can go through Prep Zone and things like that. So parents, if you have experience sending your kids to prep schools, you can please put that in the chat and other parents can read about it. But my younger brother never did SAT prep. I just did it with him because I thought it would be better. Okay, so I think that's all of them. So now what I'll do is I will, if all the parents can come on video as well, so I can see you, and I will.
Sorry, there's one more question, which was asked: are scholarships given based on SAT scores as well?
That's a good question. In the US, most scholarships are for US citizens. It's very difficult to get a scholarship for non-US citizens. And none of the ones I've seen anyone like me or any of my family members get have been based on SAT scores. It's usually based on activities or fraternities that you join, or if you do really well in your school. Some schools give some scholarship to the person that's ranked 1. So that's the only one I've seen people getting. Okay, so I will let people come off. Oh. Okay. Indian kids doing better on math than verbal. That's very true. I think not just Indian kids, like Asia in general does much better on math than they do on English. The SAT actually is surprising to me because the SAT it's all logic based. Even the English is actually logic based. And so I'm hoping that by the end of these 30 days, they do equally well in English. And I've already tested this part out. I test all of this on Naman. So Naman is my guinea pig. I test the entire course on Naman, and then if it works on Naman, then I bring it to this class. So I've tested the English also on Naman, and it's been very helpful. So I hope it's helpful for everybody. The only one thing, if I could add, would be reading, comfort reading, getting comfortable with reading. And one way to do that is just make sure they're reading some professional level journal, like the Wall Street Journal or New York Times or any other such academic journals. If just reading that, getting used to that, that will help. Actually, that will help a lot if they can do that. But if they don't, it will just be a little slower. But the logic used is just reasoning. It's the same sort of reasoning used in mathematics. Okay. So as promised, I will let everybody come out. You can unmute yourselves whenever you want. And if you have any questions, please, or anything to add, things to say, please unmute yourself and come on out.
Hello, Pulkit.
Hi.
Hi, this is Shraddha here. I'm Shriya's mother. First of all, thank you so much for the initiative that you're taking. You're taking so much of your time out, and my daughter is really learning and enjoying these sessions. Frankly, to tell you, she was initially a bit reluctant to join, but once she joined your first session, she enjoyed it so much, and she always looks forward to these sessions now. And I really liked the concept that you mentioned about collective learning. So I totally agree with you, and this is really helping all the kids. What I would like to check with you is, in this session, you mentioned that there are other elements like essays, interviews, and all also equally important. And since you're doing so well in coaching these kids, is there any possibility that you have at least one session on each topic, essays and interviews, to give them some tips and tricks on how they should really prepare for these things, right? Because this is something which is totally new for them. So that would be great. That's something like something that I would like to check with you, if that's possible.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the question, and thank you for the kind word. I think that's a great idea. I can definitely add that in and see what I can do. I have some quick ideas that I could potentially share, but yeah, let me think of that and then I can add it in. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pulkit. Yeah.
Hi, Pulkit. This is Sonal. I'm Shreya's mom.
Hi.
And like every other parent, thank you so much for reaching out and teaching our kids. This is really, really valuable, and they really like it. So my daughter is finishing grade 11 and she's getting into grade 12. She has taken SAT before.
Okay.
Now they've been scrapped and she can only take it in August now. And she's planning to join some school also for coaching, but I'm going to tell her that she should do Khan Academy instead and try to do some individual learning. So my question to you was like, I wasn't sure about this, but is there like is there negative marking in SAT where like the number of questions you get wrong, your score basically keeps decreasing because of that?
No negative marking.
Okay, so is it a percentile based kind of a thing?
Yes. Yes, the
okay.
grades are curved. Yeah, and in terms of her joining SAT coaching, look, I think maybe I'm the wrong person. I shouldn't have said that earlier. I think maybe I'm the wrong person to suggest on coaching. I haven't seen any of the offerings here in depth. Like I don't have any family or friend that went through it, so I don't know yet. I'm planning on doing some research on it over the next 30 days, so I can answer this question better in the future. So, but
that would be terrific.
Yeah, I've also sent out a survey asking parents if they'd had their kids enrolled in coaching classes. I would love to have a one-on-one with you and hear about your experience, and also just hear about what they did well and what you wish could have improved. I think maybe that could be some beneficial information I could bring to this class also for kids. So if you can fill out that survey and let me know, or just send me an email if you've had, if you've already put your child through coaching, then again, we can do collective learning and help other parents who are now wanting to put their kids through coaching.
Thanks so much, Pulkit. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, hi Pulkit. This is Navya's mom.
Okay.
As everyone has said, thank you so much. It's a wonderful initiative, and we really appreciate that you're taking your time out and helping these kids.
Yeah.
So my question to you would be, can you tell us the tentative weightage of the SAT or the other activities that you mentioned? That generally, what is the weightage that the universities look at? If a rough idea, if we can get, so that the kids can work around,
Yeah.
you know, roughly that.
So weightage, actually, I don't know. The only way you could potentially find out is by looking at the two systems, C Alpha or Family Connection, and just looking at what kind of people get in. So it looks like NYU takes more weightage because there's X's and ticks everywhere, but maybe I think Northwestern does not as much. I don't know that the admissions committee keeps their things very closed, their processes. So I don't know. And it's also different for every university. So I'm sorry, I won't be able to answer that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Pulkit. This is Rakesh and Preeti calling in from Tokyo, Arman's parents.
Okay.
So, yes, and you know, we have ties to Singapore. We used to live in Singapore many, many years ago.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you. So thank you for taking your time. Thank you for, teaching kids. Very important. So Arman is in 9th grade, so a little early in the process.
Okay.
What is the best way for, what should he be doing now? And of course, he will get summer break very soon for him to be prepared eventually.
Yeah, okay. So this is, the way I'm understanding your question is what you should do now to get prepared for university application, right?
Yes.
So again, that depends quite on the school that you're trying to aim for. One of the things actually my friend is working on is a platform through which you can chat with current university students. So I can see how that's going and maybe send that across once that platform is set up, if you think that would be helpful. But obviously that one you'd be paid, you'd have to pay to set up conversations. I think the best way to do this, and I actually get mad at my parents, they didn't do this when I was applying for colleges. They did this for my younger brother, but not for me. But is to honestly just go to as many parents as you know with kids in university and ask them what they did. The best way to learn from success stories from the past. And I think maybe what I can do is dedicate one session of this class also towards people in IB now that maybe are applying, or they can talk about activities they've done in their high school years.
Yeah,
So,
that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Very helpful. Thank you, Pulkit.
Thanks so much, Pulkit. Thank you.
Yeah. So actually, I would love to ask everyone another question, which is, I'm going to relaunch the poll in a second. But the question is, I'm thinking of setting up, would you consider doing a summer boot camp SAT where for 4 weeks, they go somewhere residential and the students can live there and then do SAT, but then we also touch on different university things, university application aspects also. And the target would be people that are just finishing IGCSEs and going on to IBs. Do you think that would be something that would be interesting? So I'll relaunch this. There's things like this in the US, but I haven't seen those in Asia yet. Okay, thank you so much. This is what we have. Okay, thank you for sharing this. I will note this down. I know many of my friends in the US went to these kinds of boot camps. I'm not sure why they don't have those in the US, in Asia. Okay.
Hi, Pulkit. This is Ganesh, Amrita's dad. I have a question in general about attention spans in kids nowadays and the whole idea of how they can improve their stamina through the whole SAT exam. So it's not about their abilities, but it's about staying focused. I mean, and the boot camp, I think, is a great idea to foster more of that.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
So, I mean, do you see any effect of, attention spans interfering with test-taking abilities? So it's not, how much they know, but it's how much they can focus in a short period of time.
Absolutely. I think
ways you can suggest in your boot camp, for example.
So I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think this is the core of SAT. And so my process is right now, over the past week, I'm trying to just generate some trust with the kids by, focusing on logic and reasoning. Once I can generate that trust, then I'm going to introduce many of these soft approaches I've used for that stamina. Simple things like the drink that you drink during the SAT, like taking coconut water instead of fizzy drinks, can make a big difference. Or the food that you eat in that morning, like eating light fruits like bananas, as opposed to like, something more heavy, like a sandwich in the morning, can make a difference. The amount of sleep you get that week, like what time you go to bed, what time you wake up. And I'm doing this slowly because I think most of you parents will agree with me that we've been trying to get everybody to go to bed on time and wake up early, but it doesn't work. I'm still trying to convince my younger brother to go to bed on time and wake up early. And he's 21 years old now. It still doesn't happen. So I'm hoping that I can develop that trust so that when I say go to bed on time, it actually makes a difference. So you're absolutely right. There's many different approaches, and I will be touching on many of them as we go on. But I'm leaving them a little towards the end of the class once I've developed the trust with the kids, so that they're more prone to listening.
Fantastic. Thanks for all you're doing.
Yeah, I'm glad.
There were some questions in comments. If no parent is asking a question right now, I think we can address those, which were left. So, does taking the ACT instead of SAT give an edge to students in the university application process?
I actually don't know the answer to this question. I actually don't know. I think you can just Google search that one. I would think it's the same. It doesn't, like for grad schools, I know they do GRE and GMAT and they treat them the same. It's exactly the same. So I don't think there's any difference.
And also about the essay, is it optional, and is there anything which is going to happen about the essay in the classes?
Oh, we are not going to be touching on the essay. Let me think. I guess if we have time, I could touch on it. Yeah, let me consider it. Thanks for that question. The essay is optional. It depends. Again, each school says on their application website if they require the essay or not. So it depends on what schools you're applying to. If you're applying to some of the top schools, then I think everywhere it says optional is basically required. That's how you read it, or that's the way I've been reading it. So I would go ahead and do the essay. I might as well. It's the last thing in SAT, right, Naman? And so
yeah,
doing the essay does not hamper your mental stamina for the rest of the SAT paper.
Hey, hi, Pulkit. This is Khushi's mom. I can't thank you enough for what you're doing. I think you're doing an amazing job, and this goes beyond just taking the SAT. I think it helps the kids to just get smarter and think in different ways, and it's a skill they can carry through through the rest of their learning as well. So thank you. And that question about the essay that's part of the SAT was mine. So perhaps you may want to clarify for new parents that we are talking about the written piece that's part of the SAT and not the college essays.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for that clarification. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, because I think some parents may not be so familiar with the SAT format, and they may not know there's an essay in that as well. So
yes. So thank you so much for the clarification, which is that the SAT also has its own essay. This is separate from the university application essay. And actually, this reminds me of another point I wanted to make, which is something I'm happy my parents did was that they got very involved in the process, and my dad knew more about the application process than even I knew. And that helped me because what happens is when I was in high school, I didn't know what happens after high school. I don't know what the world is like after high school. So when dad told me, oh, take the SAT, it will benefit you, that sentence didn't make sense to me because I'm not sure how it will benefit me. I haven't lived that life yet. Now looking back, I know SAT helped me. And so if the parent can be involved and be aware, because you've lived a life after high school, you can know what makes sense to focus on. And then also you can accordingly, with your stories and having your child talk to other people that have applied to university, help build a story of what life looks like after high school. And that will help, I think, the child become more motivated and inspired to do more work. So one of the things I'm going to be doing in these classes is talking about how my years in high school helped shape my years in university and eventually get a job. And so I hope that inspires them to do a little bit more in high school to help them in their future life, because they now have a better understanding of what the world is like after high school.
There was a question about whether there could be more SAT questions done every session.
Oh, okay. So so my style of teaching is very different. I think doing more SAT questions is a good idea, but I'm going over how to do study and how to do SAT questions. And once I've taught that, then you can do more SAT questions on your own. You don't really need a tutor or someone to mentor you in that process. So I think if I can teach them how to approach an SAT question, then that's the best use of the time that we have together. And then they can spend their time doing more questions on their own. There are 10 full practice tests on Khan Academy. You can do them, but I would say there's no need to do all 10. If you do this properly, like for example, with Naman and I, we just did one math paper just once. And the second time he did the math paper, he got an 800 on it. So there's something to be said about doing one paper so in depth and getting as much learning from that you just know the process from then on. Once you know how to make the test, there's no point in knowing in doing more test papers. So that's my approach. I hope it works. If it doesn't work, then they can do more questions on their own. But that's the approach that has worked for me and that I will be doing in these classes. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I will be absolutely touching on these soft skills like how to study, following timetables, taking notes, and sleeping and eating as well. That will be key. I think the impact of what I'm going to share is going to be lost a little because it's on video. But I will be sharing like the schedule that I follow right now, and that's been helpful for me in college. In terms of universities saying that tests are optional, should they take it? Because this is new, I really don't know how to handle for this one. I think if it's optional, the way to think about this that I could share is think about if you're spending 50 hours taking an optional SAT, could that 50 hours be spent in doing IB studies or doing activities that could increase the application of the child? If that is true, then I would rather they do activities and they do IB studies as opposed to SAT. So these are not individual buckets. I would again think about this as a whole, where to spend those hours. And if there's better use of that hour elsewhere, spend it there. But there's some universities that need it. If they need it, then you still do it. Any last couple questions? Oh, best time. I think best time for taking SAT is before IB. I truly think that the knowledge and information you need for SAT is already done by the time you're done with IGCSE. And Naman, who I test this on, is just finished up his IGCSE and will start IB next year. So and he's doing perfectly fine. Like the SAT, like I showed you, is not that difficult. Great. So thank you so much. We'll stop it here. Seems like I hope this was helpful for you. I hope this is helpful for your child. My request is there's still 3 weeks left. We're starting English soon. I would love if you can share this class with other people in Singapore. I would love for more people who are sitting at home and having nothing to do join in these classes. I would really, really love if all of Singapore can benefit from this. Make the most of a very difficult situation that we're going through. So if you can share this link with other people in your parents' WhatsApp groups or with other people, I would really appreciate it. Would love to see more people join. And again, I'll be repeating everything. So if they join, they don't miss anything. And like you noticed, the big aspects will be coming in later as kids are developing trust with me. So thank you so much for joining.